Right, how's it going? Hope everyone's good. So, what I wanted to talk about in this video, and it is just a discussion, and I'm not trying to profess or pontificate anything. I want to know what you think, so please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. And also, sort of by doing this, I hope that I might be able to draw some kind of conclusion. The topic is ego in music, because I see this come up quite a lot, certainly in some spaces, forums, groups, and that kind of thing. And this idea that some people can be put off when an artist is overly egotistical. But I want to break it down into really what it means, largely for my own understanding. I'm not necessarily trying to educate anyone else, certainly not on the definition and meaning of the word, but also why an artist or musical artist might appear to have an inflated ego. And the question is it necessary to some degree? Firstly, I was looking at the definition of ego, again, breaking it down for my own understanding, not some kind of didactic English lesson, but this is what I was reading. It's a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance, okay? And the psychoanalysis underneath that is the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and unconscious and is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity, which sounds kind of necessary. But going back to the noun and stopping at a person's sense of self-esteem, okay, self-esteem is confidence in one's own worth or abilities, which I find interesting, especially when correlating it to writing and creating music, taking out the one's own worth, and we're left talking about confidence in one's own abilities. And I guess this comes down to having a healthy ego, or perhaps we might talk about somebody needing a boost to their ego. So I was thinking about this, and I personally think, again, let me know your thoughts in the comments, that it is necessary to have a display of ego as a musical artist, a display of confidence in one's own abilities. Now, when people, listeners and the audience started to receive the music I played, it was mostly in a live environment. Being in a band, on stage, first it was playing drums, then it was guitar and singing, and to an extent, you had to get up there and look like you knew what you were doing. The more confidence you had, the better the performance was received. A display of shyness and timidness doesn't really communicate well with the audience. And because I had seen this with other bands and more recently with solo singers, last year I was invited to be on a panel of judges at this event, which was Kettering's Got Talent, which was a privilege and a really great afternoon. And one singer in particular had a great voice, great ability, but the feedback from everyone was that they needed more confidence, and that they should indeed be confident because they were so able. And, throughout this show, this contest, one of the things we were all looking for is when someone comes on and owns the stage. And when they did, even when the performance or the skill wasn't as good, that confidence, and in my opinion, that ego, put them a little closer to the top. So is this a point where confidence and ego come to a point and they have to remain balanced? And even when they do, are some people only noticing the ego and not really appreciating that it's necessary to support and maintain some level of confidence? But going back to my band years, and we were only a small band, mainly sort of performing locally, the town hall, that kind of thing. Perhaps it was a good starting point for me to develop some show of confidence and to recognize that it was necessary to express creativity, in that receivable way. And then when the band split up and we'd all started to grow up and go in different directions, when I went to a recording studio to record my first solo album, I went in there with confidence, as I felt it would come across in the recording, that it would come across to the audience, the listeners, because that is what I'd come to understand works. And then after that, partly thanks to the guy at the recording studio, Angus, over there at Farheath, thank you Angus, he suggested that a Roland 303 would be ideal for me and the music that I was making. And that was my first piece of electronic music making equipment. And this is in 1998. that's when I started making music and, recording onto CDs and then sampling with an Amiga 500. And I got my first PC and started recording digitally around 2001. And I guess in a way that confidence persisted and prevailed. Whatever sounds I was able to get out of that machine, I thought it sounded amazing. And at the time it was pre-internet for most people, which makes me sound decrepitly old, but I wasn't really hearing other people making the same music that I was. And if I had people round, I'd be saying, listen to this, I'd be putting it on CD and giving them out literally by the hundreds. So excited, saying, listen to this, it's incredible. And very much it's still the same today. So, in that sense, does it come across as excitement and confidence when an artist or myself personally says, listen to my track, it's amazing? Or does that come across as conceited and, embarrassingly vain? Because I think it's very difficult to promote yourself as an artist if you haven't got a team of people at some record label managing and paying for your advertising campaigns. An artist, and again, speaking for myself personally, will sit there for great lengths of time with really the ultimate aim of entertaining people or giving joy or some kind of emotional experience with the work that they're doing and with the ideas that they put down on paper. When it's complete, it has to be shared, put in front of people. It's a necessary part in the process. It's no different to when an author sits down to write a book. They want to create a compelling story, then keep the reader engaged, and the author isn't necessarily writing the story for themselves because that would just be a diary.
Dear Diary.
And I think it's the same for many, if not most, musical artists. They want to make a song that everybody loves, and I think that's got to be a difficult thing to do if you don't love it yourself. But going back to this idea that confidence is in part propped up by a healthy amount of ego, or at least the part of ego that represents confidence in one's own abilities, I truly personally believe that it's a very necessary thing. When I sit there making music for maybe 8 hours straight, it's because I'm loving what's coming out of the speakers. I might have created a bass sound that works so well with the drums, or the piano part or the lyrics make me want to cry with joy. So when it comes to presenting that final piece, that shyness and timidness that doesn't carry well on stage is equally the same. When we push that work onto the digital platforms to try and conjure this cloak of modesty, I made this track, I hope somebody likes it, to me would be somewhat fake, like a false persona projected in the hope of gaining some kind of wider support. I think it's totally fine to say, here's my work, it's the best thing I've ever done, and I am ecstatic because it sounds incredible. That's the kind of energy and enthusiasm that it deserves to be presented with, especially if it is what you as an artist are truly experiencing. Now, it might be that the average listener, not to make assumptions, but I've certainly come across this, doesn't really appreciate or understand the time, the effort, the commitment, the perseverance, not to mention the struggles and challenges that have been overcome when writing and producing music, which is why confidence in one's abilities can seem like boasting, big-headedness, vanity, and of course this inflated ego. So I think it's a difficult balance to get right, because I think without enough confidence by way of ego, one might never believe in themselves, or as was the case for me back in 2006, might never be brave enough to send that CD to the radio station and get an album played on Radio 1. And of course, it's easier to be more confident once we receive feedback. But as a singer, even with great ability, it might be necessary to muster that confidence in the first place in order to be heard. So that is essentially my thoughts on ego in music, or ego as an artist. I do think it's necessary as almost being part of the package of charisma. I think it's necessary to grow and develop as an artist. And in certain scenarios, it's possibly merely just courage, excitement, and also being proud of achievement and success that is being perceived as egotistical. But I would say we should never certainly never let other people's views and opinions stop us from being excited about what we're doing and sort of following through with that excitement, and expressing that excitement at the final stages, especially if deep down that is what you are feeling and experiencing. There is such a thing as a healthy amount of ego, and it might be that which drives you forward and keeps you consistent. So don't try to extinguish it entirely to simply shape and steer the opinions that others might form of you. Express whatever it is you're feeling whilst making your music, through your music, and as you present that finished piece to your audience. And it doesn't mean thinking you're the greatest, though some people in history have thought that, and they were, but being overjoyed and proud of what you've done, whilst knowing that we're always learning and there's always room for improvement, that retains a certain degree of modesty in itself. But that's it. Just a chat, just a discussion. Is something that I've been thinking about, so I thought I'd package it up and upload it to my YouTube channel. But please let me know what you think. Get involved in the comments. Keep it friendly and meaningful if you will. I'd rather be having this conversation in a room with all of you, so you could come in with contributions and stop me when I digress. But for now, have your say in the comments and I'll get back to you. And remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers this year. I've got more videos on the way. There's also a couple of new tracks out by me. I'll let them play out now. Please do check them out on your favorite streaming platforms. I think they sound great and I hope you do too. And that's it. Until next time, take it easy, stay creative, keep smiling, sound.